One is Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White running out of answers? After the team suffered a crushing and embarrassing defeat against the Atlanta Dream, her post-game comments left many fans more frustrated than reassured. Supporters expected to hear about changes, accountability, and a clear plan to turn things around, but what they got instead sounded more like explanations than solutions. Welcome back to WNBA Pro. Today, we are taking a closer look at the comments made after the game and examining what they really reveal. We are not interested in polished media responses or carefully crafted talking points. We want to understand the deeper message behind the words and the important issues that were never addressed. When Stephanie White's remarks are compared to the straightforward honesty shown by Caitlin Clark, a worrying picture begins to emerge. Questions are growing about whether there is a serious disconnect within the Fever organization and whether the team is failing to make the most of Clark's record-setting performances. The concerns become even bigger when we look at how the game unraveled and what the coaching staff had to say afterward. What may be even more important is what was never said at all. When you take a closer look at Stephanie White's exact comments and compare them with the direct and honest approach of rookie star Caitlin Clark, the difference is impossible to ignore. It paints a picture that should concern every Fever fan. Is the gap between players and coaches growing larger behind the scenes? Has the situation inside the Indiana Fever locker room reached a critical stage? And perhaps the biggest question of all, are Caitlin Clark's historic performances being wasted because the coaching staff has no clear solution to the team's ongoing problems? To answer those questions, we first need to examine how the game completely fell apart. During the post-game press conference, Stephanie White was asked about the disastrous third quarter that allowed the Atlanta Dream to take full control of the matchup. And her response focused heavily on one particular statistic that she believed explained the collapse.
Who does think what's the breakdown in the third quarter?
I think it started with our turnovers. We had 9 turnovers. They had 11 points off of those turnovers. It's hard for us to recover when they get those direct points, and there's no transition defense for those kinds.
Take a closer look at that explanation. Stephanie White focused on the Fever's 9 third-quarter turnovers, pointing out that Atlanta turned those mistakes into 11 points and that Indiana struggled to get back on defense afterward. At first glance, that sounds like a simple and logical reason for the loss. Most basketball fans understand that turnovers often lead to easy scoring opportunities for the other team. But when you look beyond the surface, a much bigger question needs to be asked. What is causing so many turnovers in the first place? Are players making random mistakes, or are those errors a sign of deeper problems within the offense? If the same issues continue to appear game after game, it becomes fair to question whether the offensive system is putting players in difficult situations and making the team too easy to defend. That is where the real discussion begins, because turnovers are often the result of larger problems rather than the problem itself. As we have highlighted many times on this channel, understanding the root cause is far more important than simply pointing to the final statistic. When an offense lacks movement away from the ball, struggles to create effective screens, and consistently suffers from poor spacing, turnovers become almost unavoidable. Defenses can easily focus on the primary ball handler, making every possession more difficult than it needs to be. If Caitlin Clark is constantly forced to attempt risky passes through multiple defenders just to get the offense started, then the responsibility cannot fall entirely on the players. At some point, it becomes fair to question whether the system itself is creating those mistakes. Are players failing to execute, or are they being placed in situations where success is far more difficult to achieve? That is the question many fans are beginning to ask. Instead of viewing turnovers as isolated errors, some see them as a sign of deeper issues within the team's overall approach. And the concerns did not end there. When Stephanie White was later asked about the team's lack of defensive awareness and ability to anticipate plays, her response raised even more alarm and left many Indiana Fever supporters wondering just how serious the underlying problems might be.
One of those A's you thought the team should do better at would be more consistent on these.
I think it's streamlined. It's 3 A's for a reason. I think I felt like it was a lot of shot making in the first half, and I thought we did some really good things. I think when they went on that run in the third, we became a little disconnected, and so we weren't as active, we weren't as aware, we weren't anticipating as.
Did you notice the word Stephanie White chose to use, disconnected? That single term may reveal more than anything else from the entire press conference. A head coach openly acknowledging that her team lost focus, stopped anticipating plays, and became disconnected during a crucial stretch of the game naturally raises serious questions. When momentum begins to swing heavily in favor of the opposing team, who is responsible for stopping the slide and bringing the group back together? Many would argue that this is one of the most important responsibilities of a head coach. Recognizing problems in real time, calling a timeout, making adjustments, and restoring confidence are all part of leadership. That is why statements about simply needing to find ways to regroup can sound frustrating to fans who are looking for stronger answers. If these breakdowns continue to happen in key moments, it becomes fair to wonder whether the players fully trust what is being asked of them on the court. Are they losing confidence because the game plan is not producing results, or is something else causing these repeated struggles? Those questions became even more interesting when the spotlight shifted from the coach to rookie star Caitlin Clark. The moment she stepped in front of the microphone, the tone of the conversation changed completely, bringing a much different level of honesty and urgency to the discussion.
And, we've just got to find ways to regroup.
Caitlin, you had a really strong first half. What did you see in that third period, maybe defensively, that changed, that maybe you had to make some adjustments?
Yeah, I mean, I think just got to take care of the ball better, and that starts with me. So I think just focusing on that, and then, what we did well in the first half was playing transition, spray, find open people, and then really hard to do that when all we do is foul and they score. Like, we didn't play in transition at all in the second half because of
Kind of response many people associate with leadership. After scoring 26 points and shooting better than 60% from the field, Caitlin Clark stepped in front of the media and immediately accepted responsibility for her own mistakes. She did not make excuses, criticize teammates, or blame outside factors. Instead, she owned her performance and then offered an insightful explanation of what changed during the game. Clark pointed out that in the first half the Fever were able to push the pace, move the ball quickly, and create open shots. In the second half, however, that rhythm disappeared. According to her, constant fouls and Atlanta's scoring opportunities prevented Indiana from getting out in transition and playing the style that had been successful earlier in the game. It was a simple but important observation. A fast-moving offense depends on flow, pace, and opportunities to attack before the defense is set. When a team keeps fouling, allowing points, and dealing with frequent stoppages, that rhythm vanishes. The result is a chain reaction where defensive mistakes begin to hurt the offense as well. Clark's explanation highlighted how closely connected both ends of the floor really are. What stands out is that the rookie guard clearly identified a major issue affecting the team's performance and explained it in a way that many fans could easily understand. That naturally leads to another important question. If fouling and defensive discipline are such major problems, how did the coaching staff address the issue, and what solutions were offered?
Is there something being done that's correctable, or is that just how it's being called?
I mean, I think a little of both. Obviously there's been an emphasis to call a lot of fouls. Freedom of movement's been an emphasis. We've seen foul calls go up altogether. I think individually, certainly there are some things that we can do to keep ourselves from being as vulnerable, and collectively there are some things that we can do to have each other's backs so where we're not in those positions.
Stephanie White's response immediately drew attention because many fans felt it shifted part of the focus toward officiating. She mentioned the league's increased emphasis on foul calls and freedom of movement, suggesting that these changes have affected how games are being played. While rule interpretations can certainly impact teams, critics argue that every franchise is competing under the same conditions. That raises an important question: can officiating trends fully explain a defensive performance that allowed more than 100 points? White also spoke about the importance of teammates supporting one another defensively and avoiding situations that leave players exposed. However, many observers believe the issue goes beyond individual effort. When defensive rotations break down, help defense arrives late, and players are constantly forced to recover from mistakes, fouls often become a last resort rather than the root problem. In those situations, the bigger concern may be the overall structure of the defense rather than isolated errors from individual players. That is why the next question during the press conference became so important. A reporter directly asked how the team's ongoing foul trouble had affected the defensive schemes and adjustments being used. The answer that followed quickly became one of the most talked about moments of the entire media session and left many fans questioning.
So it's a combination of things.
How does that change how you kind of scheme defensively, with it being forward that way?
Yeah, I mean, there are only so many schemes you can do. So I think for us, it's just being more intentional and having a higher discipline level when we're in those moments. A lot of our fouls are coming because we're not taking care of the point, and then we're getting it in rotation, or we're behind plays, or we're late, and that's where a lot of our fouls are coming from.
Interview 6-1 comment from Stephanie White stood out more than any other, her statement that there are only so many adjustments a coach can make. For many fans, those words were surprising because coaching at the professional level is often defined by constant adaptation and problem solving. The best coaches are known for making changes throughout games, experimenting with different defensive looks, adjusting matchups, and finding creative solutions when things are not working. That is why some people interpreted White's comments as a sign of frustration or a lack of confidence in the team's current direction. She argued that the primary issue is not the system itself, but rather the players' ability to execute it with consistency, discipline, and focus. In other words, her position appears to be that the plan is in place, but the team is not carrying it out effectively on the court. However, that explanation naturally raises another difficult question. If the same problems continue to appear over and over again, despite repeated opportunities to correct them, where does responsibility ultimately fall? At some point, observers begin to wonder whether the issue is solely player execution or whether changes to the overall approach are also needed. When players repeatedly find themselves out of position, reacting late, or struggling in key situations, it becomes harder to separate the performance on the court from the system designed to guide it. Those are the questions that continue to fuel debate among Fever fans as they search for answers during a challenging stretch of the season. If players are repeatedly arriving late on rotations and struggling to stay in the right defensive positions. As Stephanie White acknowledged, it is reasonable to ask whether the system truly fits the roster. This press conference felt like much more than a discussion about a single loss. It highlighted larger concerns surrounding the direction of the franchise and raised important questions about how the team plans to move forward. At the center of the debate is a noticeable contrast in basketball philosophy. Caitlin Clark has built her success on playing with pace, reading defenses quickly, creating opportunities in transition, and making fast decisions with the ball. Her strengths shine brightest in a free-flowing system that rewards movement, spacing, and creativity. Meanwhile, many critics believe the current approach has too often looked slow, predictable, and unable to consistently maximize those strengths. That has led to growing concern among fans about whether the team is fully taking advantage of one of the most talented young players the league has ever seen. The Fever front office now faces a crucial decision. They must determine whether the current coaching approach is the best path for the team's future or whether adjustments are needed to better support the development of their franchise cornerstone. When a coach suggests that available solutions are limited, it naturally sparks debate about flexibility, adaptability, and long-term vision. Those comments have only intensified the conversation about whether the current system is truly the right fit for both the roster and the future of the organization for many critics. Comments suggesting that there are limited adjustments left to make can be interpreted as a sign that the current approach has reached its limits. In a league as competitive as the WNBA, adaptability is often one of the most important qualities a team can have. Opponents constantly adjust, strategies evolve, and successful organizations are usually the ones willing to make changes when necessary. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark continues to carry a significant load on the court, delivering strong scoring performances, accepting responsibility after tough losses, and embracing a leadership role despite being early in her professional career. That is why the ongoing discussion is no longer focused solely on normal rookie challenges or short-term growing pains. Instead, the conversation has expanded to larger questions about coaching decisions, roster construction, player development, and the overall direction of the franchise. Many fans and analysts are closely watching to see whether the Fever can build a system that fully maximizes Clark's unique talents and helps the team take the next step forward. We have examined the comments, reviewed the reactions, and explored the key questions surrounding the situation. Now the discussion shifts to you. Do Stephanie White's remarks suggest that major changes are needed, or are the Fever simply working through the natural challenges of building a contender around a young superstar? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join the conversation. As always, keep looking beyond the headlines and paying attention to what is really being said.